So welcome to episode 3, The Latter Years. Weird stuff about presidents. I'm your host, Tommy, bringing you all the weirdness of presidents from number 26 to number 34. And getting things started with our first weird president, Ted, I bring you my co-host, Tommy Jr.
Hi, it's me, Tommy Jr. So if you remember from the last episode, it ended with President McKinley being assassinated and us teasing who his successor would be. The vice president of McKinley was Teddy Roosevelt, the most badass president of all time.
He was also the youngest president.
Yeah, apparently he was the youngest president of all time, despite looking like he was in his 60s.
Well, how about that? Here's a word from our sponsor.
If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
This is a famous story, so most people probably already know this one. But Teddy Roosevelt was famously shot in the chest right before giving a speech, and he gave the speech anyway.
He said, "I don't know whether you fully understand that I have just been shot. I give you my word, I do not care a rap about being shot." And he finished his hour-and-a-half speech with a bullet lodged in his chest.
Pretty awesome. He also famously said it takes more than that to kill a bull moose, which was the name of his political party.
He also refused to shoot a bear cub on a hunting trip. That's how you get the teddy bear.
That's
and,
right.
What was the other thing about? Oh, national parks and national forests.
He's the guy that did national parks.
He brought that to us. That's not weird, but...
There's a little bit of a revisionist kind of idea that he did it purely to preserve resources. That's true. A lot of the parks that he created were just preserving oil, timber, things like that. But he loved nature, and a lot of why he made the parks was for preservation of nature.
And that'll bring us to number 27, William H. Taft, president from 1909 to 1913. He was stuck in a bathtub. That's his famous thing.
Wouldn't that suck to become the president of the United States of America, and the thing that you're known for is being the guy that came after the greatest president we ever had in the modern era, and getting stuck in a bathtub?
The truth is that he probably didn't get stuck in a bathtub, but he was heavy, around 300 pounds, and he needed a bigger bathtub than what was in there. So, you know how things spread.
That sounds like you sound like a Taft apologist.
Yeah. Oh, you know, the Billy Possum didn't catch on, so it didn't beat the teddy bear. And that brought us Woodrow. 1913 to 1921. He was the 28th. Taft was the 27th, just to get through that all. Woodrow Wilson's wife, Edith Bowling Galt, was a descendant of Pocahontas.
It's fascinating. I would love to know...
Pocahontas!
Yeah, I'd love to see the family tree. Wouldn't be surprised. This is early America. It's probably just a straight line.
He, during his term, women were given the right to vote. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I could talk about that. That's really interesting. So, Woodrow Wilson's an interesting character. He was not a very progressive guy.
Yeah, no, globalism. He brought
not
globalism.
Even. Well, also he's the guy that segregated the government, like splitting black and white. That wasn't a thing before Wilson. I'm sure it was a thing in some places, like in the South, but in the federal government, the reason it passed under his administration was really because it was going to, no matter what.
Are you trying to say that because during his term, women got the right to vote?
It just happened to be Wilson.
Do you think that's why he had the series of strokes? Because it stressed him out? Because he really wasn't interested in that?
That might have also been the fact that he was in the middle of fighting World War I.
He also gave us the wonderful federal income tax and the Federal Reserve. Thanks, Woodrow. That brings us to number 29, Warren G. Harding. He was Presidente from 1 one.
1921.
Start over. That brings us to Warren Harding, number 29, from 1921 to 1923. He is infamous for having a affair with his wife's best friend or close friend, Nan Breton. There's a book called The President's Daughter if you want to learn about it, but there was a DNA test done in 2005 that proves that his daughter was in fact his mistress.
That is incredible, because usually those stories are so fake. Those, like, you hear these kinds of elaborate affair stories all the time. You hear all about, I'm the grandson of this historical person. Usually it's not true, and they got away with it because it was before DNA testing. I was really surprised to hear that this one was real.
Yeah, there's a lot of strange controversy regarding Harding. When he died, his wife immediately did not want to secure an autopsy. They buried him and everything embalmed in an hour after his death. So
they got that guy right in the ground.
There's a lot of theories that he may have been poisoned or committed suicide, and it was covered up.
I haven't looked into this. Do you think that it was kind of an FDR situation where he just had a terminal illness and didn't want to let the country know?
I don't know.
I haven't looked into this.
We should do a whole episode
that would be cool.
on that.
A whole episode on... We'll think about
Harding.
that. Warren Harding conspiracy theories. Calvin Coolidge.
Yep, number 30.
Bet you don't think of that guy when you think of presidents. Calvin Coolidge. Calvin Coolidge had a morning ritual of having someone rub Vaseline on his head while he ate breakfast.
Who doesn't do that?
What, you don't?
No.
You don't have a Vaseline guy?
No.
You don't have a guy oil you up every morning while you eat your Cinnamon Toast Crunch?
I do have two raccoons named Reuben and Rebecca running around, though.
Oh, just like President Calvin Coolidge. Yeah. He was born on the 4th of July, which is why they gave him the presidency.
I thought presidents only died on the 4th of July.
Yeah, that's usually the pattern. What's that quote? I not only use all the brains that I have, but all that I can borrow.
Yeah.
So,
no, he was good for quotes, and some say he may have started the Depression or it started under his administration.
Yeah, that must suck to... You could have been remembered as the guy that had two raccoons in the White House. Instead, you get remembered for the Great Depression.
Dying on the 4th of July don't mean nothing when you're making people lose money.
Tell us about Herbert Hoover.
Number 31, president from 1929 to 1933. Hoover's son had two pet alligators that ran around the White House grounds.
A little cooler than two pet raccoons, Coolidge.
Kinda, yeah. They were kind of strange that they would speak Chinese or Mandarin in the White House.
That's interesting. Why is that?
I think they were...
because they lived in China for some time?
Yeah. Also, the servants were made to be invisible.
They were covered in invisible ink.
They were invisible. Like, they didn't want to know about these servants.
That is strange. That is real. Okay, what we mean by invisible is, like, when he entered a room, he didn't want to see them. He wanted them to, like, jump into closets and stuff.
Which I heard they do.
Which is crazy. It's crazy when you look back on these eras, like, what was acceptable. Oh, it looks like we've got a fan favorite. We don't
32.
know what a fan favorite is yet because we just started this. Franklin D. Roosevelt, also known as the World War II guy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to know about him. Why don't you get us started on FDR?
He was obsessed with his dog, Fala. He wouldn't let anyone feed the dog. He wouldn't let anyone near the dog. It was really... He has like a section in the White House with the picture. I think you can actually see the memorial to the dog somewhere on the White House.
In the White House? That's awesome. FDR, to me, is a great mirror to Woodrow Wilson's handling of his war. Like, as in, Wilson is famously had a horrible handling of his World War. FDR's was nearly flawless. Like, he set the world up for success after World War II.
He was afraid of number 13. He wouldn't have dinner with that number of people. He wouldn't stay in a room that was that number. Anything with the number 13, he didn't like it. And the other weird thing about FDR is that he was in a wheelchair and it was hidden.
Yes, that's what I was gonna go to. That's what I completely forgot where I was heading when I was talking about World War II. He wanted to make sure he held up his status to the United States people, and at this time it was a really big deal to be disabled. So he tried to hide that as much as possible throughout his life. I believe he was paralyzed by polio.
I don't know.
Or maybe I think that might have been they figured out it was something else. It's very, very interesting character. What do you have anything else about FDR?
No.
All right.
Number 33, Harry S. Truman, 1945 to 1953. During his few weeks as Vice President, Harry Truman scarcely saw President Franklin Roosevelt and received no briefing on the developments of the atomic bomb or the unfolding difficulties with Soviet Russia. Suddenly, these and a host of other wartime problems became Truman's to solve on April 12, 1945, when he became America's 33rd president. He met his wife Bess in Sunday school when he was 6, so he locked it down. He locked it down at age 6, no problem.
He was a smooth kid.
He dropped the atomic bomb on Japan, ending World War II.
Also when he was 6.
His, I lost where I was. Oh, his,
I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, that's fine. His policy of communist containment was started in the Cold War. I think, we'll just...
The letter S is his middle name.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
That's it doesn't stand for anything.
Harry S. Truman stands for
we don't have it written
some
down in
family
our
names.
notes, but it stood for, I believe one of their names was Sullivan.
And Ship.
And for what?
And Ship.
You actually remember it?
So I think his name was S-H-I-P-P,
It was something like it was SH
Ship.
something. Sullivan and let's say Ship. He wanted to be named after, or his parents wanted him to be named after both of them. So they just said, "All right, your middle name is S." Imagine being
That's pretty weird.
Imagine being Harry Truman, and you're just like the vice president, chilling out, not having to do anything. Like, I'm gonna get to be the vice president who was vice president during World War II, baby. And then suddenly they're like, FDR's dead. By the way, you have an extinction ball. What do you want to do with it?
That'll bring us to number 34, Dwight Eisenhower. And this will be the final one of the latter years. We're going to do one more, starting with JFK, called the Modern Years or something like that. And
JFK through today.
Yeah, to number 45. So Eisenhower, 53 to 61, bringing his presidency prestige and commanding generals... Hold on. Bringing the presidency of his... That's very hard to read. We'll do it live! Bringing to the presidency his prestige commanding general... He was a great general.
Let me take a crack at this. Bringing to the presidency his prestige as commanding general of the victorious forces in Europe during World War II, Dwight D. Eisenhower obtained a truce in Korea and worked incessantly during his 2 terms, 1953 to 1961, to ease the tensions of the Cold War.
Ike. He changed the name of FDR's presidential Maryland retreat from Shangri-La to Camp David. He said Shangri-La was just a little too fancy for a Kansas farm boy.
Eisenhower created the interstate highway system. That's pretty cool.
He signed the armistice ending the Korean War.
And he retired to a farm in Gettysburg.
And that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for tuning in.
That was probably our best episode so far.
Probably was.
Like by far, by miles.
Yeah.